now. Police in Gauteng are investigating allegations that a 2-year-old was assaulted while in isolation for COVID-19 at the Dr. George Mukhari Academic Hospital, that's in Pretoria. Now, the family also claims that police at the Ga-Rankuwa police station were unhelpful when they tried opening a case there. The family also says they've battled to get help from an officer at the Family Violence, Child Protection and Sexual Offences Unit. According to Miranda Jordan, who's director of the Women and Men Against Child Abuse, the actions of the police are criminal and the family has sufficient grounds, in fact, to lay charges. Jordan has more than 20 years of dealing with such issues and joins us on the line for a bit more on this. Miranda, thanks very much for your time and welcome to the AM report. Quite a difficult story to try and make sense of. Now, there's absolutely no doubt that there are pockets of excellence within the police service. I wonder whether you think, though, that, or let me ask it this way, to what extent do you think that the general apathy and the disinterest showed by some officers actually exacerbates violence meted against women and children?
Thank you for having me. There is absolutely no doubt that is a huge deterrent to people laying charges, because that is your very first port of call. When you need help and when you need to report sexual violence, it actually states in our law, in our Sexual Offences Act, that it is a crime not to report. So what do you have to do? You have to immediately go and report. And not every police station is a particular FCS unit. And we know that stands for Family Violence, Child Abuse and Sexual Offences Unit. So what normally happens is you would go to the charge office, you would tell them what you're there for. The minute they realize that this is a very serious offense, and any sexual offense is extremely serious in the fact that the victim suffers severe trauma. So immediately you should be assisted. That should be a red flag, and that you would need assistance as soon as possible to lessen the trauma.
Absolutely.
From there, you would be told that you would need to see an officer from the FCS, and then from there you should be taken should you need a medical examination, because not all trauma suffered would need an immediate medical examination, but sexual offences certainly do need a medical examination. And when children are so small and that they can't verbalize what happened to them, the medical report, what we call the J88, would be essential and part of this criminal investigation.
Right. You mentioned the FCS, and I guess, this incident has kind of raised a whole lot more calls for trained officers, specialized trained officers to be more exact. But do you think this is where the issue lies? I mean, are we not putting, for instance, the cart before the horse here? Because in this particular instance, we're hearing that members of the FCS unit actually weren't present when this case was being reported to begin with.
Yes, so that's a big problem, Ayanda, what you've just said, and it is a problem throughout our country, and that is when people go to their local police station, their nearest police station, and they just go to the charge office. They go to the front desk there, and they tell them what has happened, and then they will need one of those officers to be sufficiently trained, and they all should be sufficiently trained if they're on that front area. They may not be specialized, but they should be trained enough to be able to say, right, this is what this case is. The person has just come forward. They've spoken about something has happened serious to their child. Can we get the officer on the line? We're talking about Ga-Rankuwa, 35 minutes away from your central large FCS station in Pretoria. They should say we could have an officer here within the next 2 hours. If they do not have a waiting room, which they should have, but if they do not have a waiting room, there could be something. Maybe there's a place. Maybe they could stay in their car. If they don't have a car, maybe they could stay somewhere just safe. Or if it isn't possible for them to stay in a place where they can be contained, or a social worker nearby that could just let them stay in the office, they should at least be given, right, go home. We will have somebody with you in the next 2 hours. The officer's name, is going to be so-and-so. This is who we've located. My name is Officer so-and-so. So you just reassure the person that there will be assistance. Well, I will tell you right now, Yanda, that is not what happens in almost every single station that does not have specialized officers. So in most of our cases, I'll tell you how it works, how we have those pockets of excellence, as I mentioned. The way we have those pockets of excellence is that we work with quite a number through our clinics of police stations, of FCS officers, and in their particular cluster. So we have direct cell numbers. We have numbers as an organization, as many organizations in my field do, and we can phone an officer directly. But this is not the way it works for your normal South African citizen. And this, for me, is diabolical. It is diabolical that, first of all, that we have a child raped while in isolation. And then the service. Now, the fact that she has persistent family, aunt, mother, who are prepared to go this distance and action, because how many people are put off by that very first contact where they do not feel helped, where we say report to the police immediately. This is that kind of time. It is actually listed on in their website that it is a failure to not report an offense. I want to say, what about the failure of the police to investigate and assist a family in need in a case like this? And I want to say that, for me, it says that the interview is to be conducted in surroundings that are familiar to the victim or reassuring to the victim. And it specifically says that once they have a statement, a docket must be opened, registered on CAS, and the affidavit must be made, in which the following must be made clear: time, date, etc.
Right.
Where is all this information, Ayanda? And what about the fact that we have missed the time, the 48 hours or 72 hours in which to have a medical examination done?
And that's where I was going to go, Miranda. It's exactly that point I wanted to touch on. With so much time that's lapsed now, part of the evidence is probably at best compromised. I mean, how is this likely to complicate this investigation?
Well, absolutely. It is compromised. Let's be very honest. The mother, in one of the reports, said quite clearly she noticed white liquid on the child's private part. She wasn't sure what that was, but she saw it again the next day. Right. If they went then, they had evidence that day. It was, this could have been, I have not seen the child, this could have been semen, this could have been traces of a discharge. We do not know, but this was vital evidence that could have been collected that day. Her panties, her, swabs, the actual type of injuries that would have spoken enormously of the type of crime that had been committed against this type of sexual violence that committed against this child. But also there was a possibility of getting DNA evidence. What possibility is there now? Because once you wash a child, once, twice, there's evidence.
Yeah.
We will definitely be able to show that there was the fact that this child was seriously sexually violated and raped when the other, we will be able to see tears and other things. I mean, as a clinic like ourselves, the minute we get an incoming call, we work very closely with the FS, the minute we get an incoming call to say, because we work directly from when the report is done until it goes to court. So we prepare, we do the medical, the assessments, etc. A lot of work is now going to become necessary to find out, because we will now know who did it. Possibility of DNA loss, child being able to adequately verbalize, I mean, a 2-year-old, and to successfully put a 2-year-old, you cannot put a 2-year-old on the stand, but to have had some sort of a description as soon as possible, and also to have parents who immediately thought and could immediately go back in line. Where were they? Who saw the child last? Where? Also becomes more difficult. They've been re-traumatized so severely by the system that was supposed to protect them.
Absolutely. And I guess the big question now, Miranda, is what other recourse can this family take? I mean, the injustices are quite clear, not only from this ordeal, but what followed after that when this family tried to get to the bottom of how the law can intervene. What options does the family take to respond, particularly to what appears to be a great show of apathy at best from some of the officers?
Oh, well, absolutely. Well, at best, as you say, negligence and gross negligence. There is no doubt for me that there is, both the officers who, with their attitude when they originally came to report it and said they were on a shift, that is of absolutely no interest to this family who have a tiny child who has been so seriously violated. They need to be shown compassion, empathy, and told, we will assist you. Somebody will assist you, whether it's 5 minutes or 10 minutes in the change of their shift. Secondly, we will get you assistance. We will give you proper information. We will make sure an FCS officer could even contact them on the phone, and somebody could assist them to get immediately to the hospital for an examination. They know that this is the most important part in their process right now, is to take this very small child and get as much evidence as they can. Now, I truly believe that against the whole Ga-Rankuwa police station, right to the top, because that just shows what is being transmitted down. And I think that the FCS officer and the station of the FCS and the commander of the FCS officer should be answering to his allegations. And I believe that these people should be named, and we should know the people in our country who refuse to help families where children are raped. And then we wonder why. I'm not saying it is the cause why. One of the biggest reasons that people do not want to open and report cases is the very first port of call. They go for help and they don't get it.
Absolutely. I guess one of the many things that ring true at this moment is that ancient old saying, justice delayed is justice denied. Let me thank you for your time. Certainly appreciate your insights. Miranda Jordan is the Director of Women and Men Against Child Abuse. Thanks very much indeed.